This will probably be our last question we'll have time to get to, but I thought we'd turn the corner because they did in the talk on Sunday, and then Tim Keller did, I thought, a great job of helping us see that question, where is God in this pandemic, which really always comes back to the classic question of what about pain and suffering? How do you reconcile a good God with pain and suffering? I just thought he did an excellent job. I don't think we can do any better here. So
if you didn't watch that, you should go watch it.
Yeah, go back and watch that, but I just thought we would give a little bit of a reaction to that, our thoughts on his take on that, just what you gleaned out of it, what it spoke to you about.
I remember the first time I heard a similar response. Once again, it was when I was in college. This was one of the questions that was very difficult for me. I was in a philosophy class, and someone brings up what's referred to often as the theodicy, which is the problem of evil, right? All-powerful God, all good God, how can there be evil and suffering? Either he's not all-powerful and he can't stop the suffering, or he's not all good and he could stop the suffering and he just doesn't care and he doesn't do that. And I did not have any good answers. I mean, I probably tried 2 or 3 weeks throwing out all these, and the guy just shut him down. I didn't have it. And then I remember at the time I was listening to another speaker who's been so instrumental, and I actually read his book, The End of Religion is the name of the book. Bruxy Cavey is the name of the guy. He's in Canada. And he gave a series that was on this, and his answer was so similar because he's the first person I ever heard say what, now I know we've talked about Greg Boyd saying of a cross-driven theology, that everything about Jesus is revealed at the cross. And he said, the answer to suffering is also found at the cross, which is that in all good and all-powerful God shows up at the cross and says, I am taking care of evil and suffering. Here's what it looks like. I take all the evil and suffering on the world and I put it on myself. And I'm going to deal with it in this way. Which I know, and I struggled often with the question of, so then why do we have it? And he also gave this explanation I've heard other people give of, it's very much like at the end of World War II, there's, VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, that's the war's finally done, but the actual final blow of the war happened on D-Day, that the war actually ended in Normandy, that's when the back is broken of the thing. And there were still some big battles, right? Battle of Bulge, I think, is after that.
They thought they were going to recover and they couldn't.
Right. And so there's all these evil forces for the metaphor coming in of that are still at work, and the back of the enemy is broken on D-Day, and there's still this stuff. And his explanation is that's what happens at the cross. The power of evil and suffering and death is broken. That's D-Day. It's done. There's no way that evil's going to win. Are there still forces of evil at work that are trying to come back and do stuff? And then there will be a VE Day. There will be a final day where it's all taken care of and it's all done. But anyway, when I heard that, to me, it really was this revelation of, once again, if you go back to the cross and Jesus, if you can view everything I know about God, everything I know about the world is revealed at the cross.
And
I think it changes everything.
Satan and the powers that you just referred to, they've been in their death throes ever since.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
that's all that we're experiencing now. It's the last guttural gasps of evil trying to stay alive, and it knows it's been defeated, but it just won't. It's just taken this long to kill it all.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. That's exactly right.
Yep.
Well, and I think to the point you just made too of the final death throes, I think that's what's hard for us to see in our very small thing. I hear people talk about this is the worst time anyone's ever lived through of the pandemic. The truth is, and not to minimize any of the bad things that have ever happened, but our world is so much better able to handle these things now, and the way that things are at work. And it's hard for us to imagine 2,000 years ago how there have been ripple effects from the cross. There are these ripple effects that really, when you pinpoint them back, started just after the crucifixion of Jesus with this church community, things like hospitals, things like our ability, every science which is birthed out of this Jesus movement. All of that I see as ripple effects of, as you said, the enemies in their death throes. They don't even have all their power. They're still hurdling things. And, when people say, is God sending the pandemic? What we know for sure is that James says every good thing comes from God. And that these things I see as the enemy just hurtling evil in any way that he can. And but in lots of ways we see there's good that still comes out of even these bad situations.
Yeah, because that's the nature of God.
That's right.
You
Yes.
know, so yeah, and for me, it always comes down to that it's like that statement that the disciples made when Jesus says, where are you guys going to go? And they said, well, we got nowhere else to go. And when I think of the question of pain and suffering, that's where I finally came down to is, and I think Tim Keller said this, is he says, there is no other faith system, there is no other God that's been presented within the world that suffers with and for his people. And there's never been a God who entered into suffering until Jesus. Right. And so when for me, I look at the cross and I think, there is the undeniable truth is suffering is a reality. Pain is a reality. We're all going to go through it. It's just what do you look to for your hope and your explanation or your rationale for it? And it's either there is none, or there is a God and it's pretty callous to it, or there's a God who embodies it for me. And to me, there's no option there.
Yeah, I don't say always, I didn't used to say this, but it finally became clear to me, pain and suffering is not a problem for Christians uniquely. Pain and suffering is a human problem. Yes. So
right.
Believing in God, not believing in God, I mean, if you don't believe there is a God who's good and powerful, and the way this, is set up, it doesn't suddenly make everything better.
Nope.
It just means now you have pain and suffering and you don't have any kind of solution.
That's right.
To it. And it's not just uniquely a Christian problem, because I think uniquely for Christianity, the way Tim described it, the way I've heard other people describe it, is Christianity has never said, hey, God came into the world and everything's supposed to be right. If you just follow Jesus, everything's right. And that good things won't happen to people that follow. I mean, bad things won't happen to people who follow Jesus. Yeah. Christianity, as Cord's always said, the best person that ever lived had the worst thing ever happen to them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So we've never gone around saying, if you just do right with God, bad things won't happen. No, it's the very best person ever, Jesus, had the worst thing ever happen to them.
And there are faith systems, going back to you, that do promise that.
That's
that
right.
if you live the right way, you do the right way.
And there are bad segments of Christianity that do that.
Sure,
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, if you just have enough faith, you won't have any problems. But inevitably, all of those people eventually die, which I guess is a problem.
You would think.
And I think you're the one that I've heard quote this the most, so you might be able to say, I think it's Philip Yancey that says, what's worse than being disappointed with God is being disappointed without God. Yep. That right. I might be disappointed with God, but man, that's way better than any kind of disappointment without God as an answer to that.
Absolutely.